Hey, good morning, folks. Welcome back to the farm. Brandy and I are picking beans today, and this probably looks a little different than what you're accustomed to with picking beans, but these are a dry bean, and there was a lot of moisture out in the garden, and we had some rain coming last week. So I went out in the garden and I pulled all the plants up, the whole plants, and I threw them in here into the shop on the floor, because we've had some warm days the last few days, so I've been in here turning them around a little bit so they didn't get moldy or anything like that. These beans were given to us from the previous owner that you hear me speak about a lot. Elderly gentleman, we love the guy. Salt of the earth, that man. But we've got to know his family really well, and even had his birthday party here not too long ago, and all his family showed up. It was a good time. But he gave us a bag of these beans. He called them a Swedish brown bean. And they're, of course, a dry bean, like I said. So there's different things you got to do for dry beans. You're not picking them green on the vine and eating them fresh, although maybe you could. The pod might not be as tender as, say, like a regular green bean. But that's what we're doing, picking these things off. And this is a lot less back-breaking than bending over out in the garden, picking them on a nice, comfortable chair. We got a beautiful breeze out here this morning. It's only about 68 degrees. It was 90, upper 90s yesterday. So this is a nice change, so I'm taking advantage of the good weather and picking these beans. Kind of my bean therapy. And a lot of you can look at this pile of beans, and this is my third pile of beans this tall. I did one earlier, and then I did one the day that I picked them. And after I get them picked, because not all of these are completely dry, I lay them out on a tarp inside the shop in there, and I'll show you that when we're close to being done. But we'll let them dry some more until they're ready to shell. And when they're completely dry, we'll probably do another video on that and show you how to shell these things. It's not terribly hard. You just throw them in like a pillowcase and then beat them on the side of something until the beans come out of the pod. So it's not too hard. And then you got to do what's called winnowing. Once the beans are good and dry and you can shell them, you have to separate the beans from the pieces of the shell or pod. And there's a way to do that too. A lot of people did it on a windy day or use a fan, and they'll get like a bucket like this and with another bucket underneath it, and you just kind of pour them into the wind and all the chaff will fly away, and the beans, because they're heavier, will drop straight down. But we have a little bit different way to do it. We're going to build a little apparatus that we can use, kind of like an air leg, if you know what one of those are. We used to use them out in California when processing the almonds, or we call them almonds. We would drop the almonds down through this air leg where it had air either being sucked up through the air leg or blown up through, and the heavier nuts would fall, and all the little pieces of hull and stuff like that would blow off into a pile or be sucked off into a pile, depending on which direction it's going. But this is my first time myself of ever growing dry beans. But it's not a difficult process. The plants grew really well out in the garden. But this is what we're doing today, and a lot of you think it's a real tedious process, like I said, seeing this big old pile of beans, and sometimes you're pulling these off, one or two at a time. But I call it my bean therapy. I've done a lot harder things in life, of course. I did some real tedious things too. Welding plow parts, sitting at a table on a fixture all day, welding plow parts, having to do 800 to 1,000 of them in a day. But this is different. And I'll tell you why it's different. Because this, I can work at my own speed. I don't have a quota. I can walk away at any time and come back. It'll still be here waiting for me. I won't have a boss hounding me because I didn't get enough done in the day. And the most important thing, and you can say this about a lot of gardening, is I am reaping 100% of the reward. Whereas if I'm working for somebody else, I'm selling my time to them, basically. And usually cheaper than I would choose to. But got nobody breathing down my neck. I don't have to answer to anybody. Not even my wife, because she's not that kind of wife. Thank God. We're real good for each other in that sense. But it's a beautiful day, and I can sit out here and enjoy nature and be out in it instead of being stuffed in a cubicle somewhere trying to fill an open shift, begging employees to come to work. That's what I did the latter part of my career. Sitting in the office trying to fill open shifts would spend sometimes my whole 12-hour shift trying to get people to come to work, which is very frustrating because it wasn't the people's fault most of the time, because most of the people I were trying to get in to come to work were off on their own time. And because the county chose to run us so short and not hire people quick enough, I'm sure they were enjoying the cost savings of that. Because little do people know, it's cheaper to pay overtime than have a full-time employee, because of all the benefits and stuff involved and all the costs of the medical insurance and the retirement and all that. It was about $10 an hour cheaper to run it on overtime. So any open spot we had, the county was saving $10 for that open spot every hour. Problem is, it burns out your employees, and pretty soon they get pretty bitter. And they don't take it out on the county, they take it out on the person trying to fill those shifts. So it's unfortunate. Some of my friends did the same job I did, and they know what I'm talking about. But I don't have to mess with that anymore. I can sit out here and pick beans, listen to my classic rock on my little Bluetooth speaker out here in the shop. It would be playing right now too, but unfortunately YouTube wouldn't play my video because they'd be saying I'm violating some copyright law by playing music while I videotape. Kind of silly too, but oh well. So grow some beans, grow a garden. It's very rewarding. Again, you reap 100% of the reward. And the biggest benefit is, remember last year during COVID when they're shutting everything down, they weren't even allowing people to go buy seeds for their garden. Guess what? I can take maybe 4 or 5 of these and shell them out and replant these right back in the garden next year. And the government can't tell me whether I can or not. So that's a good idea. When there's shortages, guess what? I have a whole root cellar full of food. that I can rely on. If the store runs out of food for months at a time, I got enough food stored for this winter that my family will survive and we will be just fine. Most people don't realize that our society right now is the most vulnerable has it ever been in our history. And there's reasons for that. One of the big reasons is things have been provided for us for so long, whether it be goods and materials. You know, you can go downtown and buy anything you want at any time pretty much. You no longer have to barter anymore. You don't have to make anything anymore. You don't have to know a skill anymore. That we are a flick of the switch away from serious problems. Just think if for some reason the power grid went down. You young folks wouldn't be able to charge your phones. And some of those people that are addicted to their phone and can't let it go and have to have it in their hand every minute of the day will basically be screaming in the fetal position over in the corner of the room if they can't charge their phone and they don't have access to the internet. The other thing you need to think about is everything you do, everything you need relies on electricity. So if the power goes out, you won't be able to buy gas, you won't be able to buy groceries, because the new cash registers, you know, you can't push a button and the little numbers come up anymore and all that without electricity. Probably couldn't even open the cash drawer without electricity. They don't have the ability to just sell things by cash anymore because the register won't ring it up. And if you just handed them some items and handed them some cash, they'd say, "What do you want me to do with this? I can't do nothing with this." You know, we had a little bit of that at work when the computers went down or something like that. We couldn't function. Everything came to a standstill. Couldn't even open a door because they were electric too. So think about that. Think about not being able to buy gas, not being able to buy food, even if you could access your money. Look at your money nowadays, it's all electronic. You wouldn't be able to spend your own money because you couldn't access it. So that's why it's so important to learn how to do things the old way. Not only so you have a skill, but you can acquire things. You can trade other people for what they have, trade them for what you have. If I have some food items, or if I have a skill that I can perform and trade work, you can trade that way and you don't need currency. And people that know how to do that will get along just fine. So that's important. Think about how vulnerable we are as a society. We've become so dependent on electricity and the internet that we're handicapping ourselves. And I guarantee you none of our enemies overseas, the ones that we perceive as our enemies, that want every American to die a slow, nasty death, they know how to do stuff. They know how to survive in the nastiest conditions. And they'll outlast you. And that's why we failed in Afghanistan as a country, and that's why every country that has taken an interest in Afghanistan for one reason or another has failed. Because those kind of people can outlast you. And they will. So I know I promised you guys to never just ramble on. So I'm going to sit here and pick beans for a while and solve the world's problems. Because I have time to sit here and think about it. Randy's over here chilling with me. We've got a lot of projects that we're able to get to now that the garden is winding down. You see the grain bin back there behind me. We've been tinkering with that lately in the evenings when Kelly gets home. That's going to be a nice little gazebo out there that we can entertain our friends in. The only thing we have left is to do a little cleanup over there basically, and I want to run some power over there, so I got a quote for a guy to come do that. And I just need him to stub it in because, again, I have some skills that I've learned and I can run electricity myself. I'm putting beans over there, dingling. What happens when I try to do stuff at the same time and talk? But anyway, I'll run the electrical myself. I just need it ran, the main service ran over there, and I don't want to mess with that because that's a lot of voltage, and that kind of thing needs to be done correctly. Once it gets there, I'm fine. But we also got to pour some concrete in there. I have some real cool old-timey lights that we're going to put in there. So it's going to be a pretty neat area where we can sit outside and enjoy outdoors. And even if it rains a little bit or if the sun's beating down, we can get in there and still enjoy the outside. And it's going to be a real nice feature. Also been working on the windmill that you saw, I think in the last garden tour I showed it to you, where we're going to be putting up a windmill out here just for yard art. I would love to have it sitting on a well where that would be good emergency water for us. But I do have a backup generator that runs our regular well. So we have the ability to run without power for a while. And I have a 1,000-gallon propane tank over there. So my generator runs on propane. So we'd be okay there for quite some time. In the winters here, every now and then you lose power. Power lines will go down. If you get an ice storm, some power lines will come down. In the summertime, it's usually thunderstorms coming through and lightning knocking your power out. The longest period we've had since we've lived here, which is basically since November. We moved to Nebraska in October, but we didn't close on this house until November. But the longest period we've gone was all night. We lost power one evening early, and the power was back on the next morning. The generator ran all night, and we still had plenty of fuel. The other plus, the plus about running the generator on propane instead of gas is you don't have to worry about the gas sitting for a long time and gumming up the carburetor and stuff like that, because propane doesn't do that. It's a gas, or by gas I mean a vapor instead of liquid, like gasoline is a liquid, and will separate and cause you issues in your carburetors. So we run on propane so we don't have that issue. And we got a 12,000 watt generator that runs everything in the house. The well, the furnace, even if we want to use the microwave and stuff like that, still runs it, probably even the dryer. Because it's 12,000 watts, and that's a lot more than most people have to run just their basic needs. We wanted to run a little more than just the basics because there was one point in time I'm hearing years ago where the power was out for a couple weeks because it was that bad. And I'm sure we have better technology now than what happened back then. So it probably won't last as long in the future, but we have the ability to run. Even if we only can run just for a portion of the day, you know, we can stretch out a lot longer that way, especially if it's the winter, because then, you know, your food won't go bad because you can put it outside. Basically, the whole outdoors is a refrigerator, so you can keep stuff, all your meat's not going to thaw out and go bad. But if we ever got to a point where it wasn't cold enough outside and we lost power and it was going to be for an extended amount of time, all that meat in the freezer, we would pull it out, thaw it out, and because we got a propane stove, I would immediately can it before it went bad. And then once you can it, it's shelf stable. So you don't have to worry about it anymore. You're not wasting or losing all of that expensive beef that you either bought or raised. Very valuable stuff. We have cans of meat already, but we would have to do all of it if we lost power for a long period of time. So I'm going to pick the rest of these beans. It should take me about another half hour, 45 minutes. And then I'll show you how we got them spread out on the ground. And then we'll let you go. See you in a bit. All right, we are done, and this is all of our dry beans. We did all these today. This right-hand side of the tarp, we did these here last time the day we were picking them. We'll spread these out a little bit better so they'll dry, and then every couple days we'll come out here and roll them around. They're well on their way to being dry. Most of the beans you can shake, and you can already hear them rattle. So, dry beans, they're the most versatile thing you could probably grow, and they're going to last forever. And yeah, that took a while. I would say all in all this morning, with the 2 wheelbarrow loads I had left, maybe took me 3 hours to go through that and pull the beans off. And there's more work to be done with them. But unlike working in the workforce nowadays, I earned all of those beans this morning, and I get to keep 100% of those beans. I don't have to give almost half of it to the government. I know I sound like a crazy prepper right now, but I'm really not, I assure you. But if you got dry beans in your pantry, you can survive for quite a long time if need be. And you don't even have to cook them. You can rehydrate them and just eat them raw. Rinse them out real good after you hydrate them. You can eat them just like a raw bean because they will rehydrate. You can make a salad with them, throw them in with some vinaigrette or whatever. But I recommend you grow dry beans. You could really save your life, literally, if you had those, and they store indefinitely. Those dry beans will store forever in your pantry, and like I said, you can plant them again and make or grow more dry beans. So it's a very good thing to plant in the garden. And if you didn't enjoy my rant earlier, I apologize, but you know, there's just certain things that you need to think about. I'm not saying you got to be a crazy prepper, but at least question yourself, say, what if this happens? What am I going to do? Have a plan, and that'll go a long ways. You'll see, you know, off-grid living is getting very popular. I'm not there yet. I don't want to live off-grid. I'm going to use the grid as long as it's available. But if the grid fails me, I can survive. So, all right, we love you guys. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll come back with some other videos where the rest of the day we're going to be processing tomatoes. And there's a million videos about that, so we're probably not going to do one, but we will show you the results. So, see you next time on Mark Kelly Farms. Bye.